Entering the Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, the U.S. Open DraftKings picks in preview. I got some money to give away in case you couldn't afford the $100 for the DraftKings Millionaire Maker this time around. There's draws to get into, but first I do want to let everyone know, if you happen to be watching this on YouTube, which I'm not sure if you can or not, whether the ban is still on, if you're looking for the Listeners League link to the Pat Mayo Experience DraftKings Open, you can find it in the description of the audio podcast. Just go rate, review, subscribe, and all that stuff, and when you download it, you'll see the link right there. Or go to my Facebook page, facebook.com/thepme. It will be in the description of the video up there. And anytime that all of a sudden YouTube goes dark again, potentially in the future, just subscribe to my Facebook page again, facebook.com/thepme. Every video will appear up there, as it will on the audio feed. Just want to get that out of the way off the hop. But here's how you get into the draw. I got some $100 to give away. I got $20 to give away, $10 to give away. A lot of stuff for people. 3 ways to get into the draw. Smash the like button to the video, leave your DraftKings handle in the comment section, and tell me which player you think is going to be the highest owned on DraftKings this week. Way number 2, subscribe, rate, and review the audio podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever. So few people do this, that's probably the easiest draw of all of them to win. Just leave a 5-star review, DraftKings handle, something nice about the show. Boom, you're in the draw. Last way to do it, subscribe, follow me on Instagram at @thepme. Heart one of the U.S. Open photos up there, and leave your DraftKings handle in the comment section. Maybe something you like about the show as well, because that will give you special weighting in everything. All the stats you see in the show today have been provided by FantasyNational.com. If you become a member of FantasyNational.com today, you'll get all the U.S. Open stuff. I mean, you should just get the yearly membership. That would be the best possible way, because it does give you a leg up on all of your betting, all of your DraftKings plays, all your daily fantasy needs as it pertains to golf. The largest, most customizable stat engine on the planet, plus all the tools, a tournament simulator, lineup generator, which just got an upgrade. Even better to use right now, that new lineup generator, custom modeling, mixed condition model, everything that you need to hopefully put you on a path to be successful and win some monies on DraftKings this week. Let's get into it. I got some great guests from DFSOnDemand.com, the Rick Run Good YouTube channel. It is Rick Gahmen. How fired up are you for the U.S. Open in what is now your home state?
Yeah, fairly fired up. The U.S. Open is probably my favorite tournament, just a hair above the Masters, because I like the carnage, Pat. I want to see guys shoot over par. I want to see them struggle like the way I do out on the course. This is always fun. Something crazy happens every year.
From Awesemo.com, he is not the bane of this show. That would be Rick, who just wants to see the world burn. It is at JazzRaz DFS on Twitter. Ben Rasa, what's going on?
Hello. Yeah, I do like the carnage. I'm not going to lie. I think I'm more of a British Open kind of guy if I had to rank them, but we'll see. Obviously, Pebble Beach, you can't pick a better venue. They've had it a bunch of times, and I think this sets up to be one of the best in recent years.
Well, let's talk about the course just very briefly, Ben. You kind of mentioned it, there's carnage. That's what you expect with the setup of the U.S. Open. These fairways are going to be razor thin, the smallest greens on the PGA Tour. You need to be super sharp off the tee to keep it in the short grass, and then super sharp with your irons. But obviously, with a greens and regulation percentage around 48% in 2000, around 53% in 2010, that around the green game is going to come into play. I'm weighting it substantially in my modeling, but it's more to really take guys out of my player pool. If you can't get it up and down, or you just struggle around the greens, that's not to say that you won't have a good week around the greens this week, but just looking at a larger sample of everything, when it gets someone like Keegan Bradley, who rates out really well, then you look at his around the green numbers, you're like, man, this guy can't chip. So if he's not hitting 100% of greens in regulation, he might be a bit screwed this week. So what do you expect to see? Because without wind, would that change the way that you think about this tournament?
Absolutely. I do think there is a scenario where there's no wind and they set it up. It's going to be difficult. I think we all know that, but where maybe some guys can score and go lower than you would expect. But on the whole, they're such small greens that you're not going to be able to get away. Even if you're a world-class iron player, you need to scramble, especially in spots. So if that's a glaring weakness, I'm with you. I'll probably push those guys to the back. Obviously, off the tee is going to be pertinent. You need to be in the fairways. Distance never hurts, but even if you're getting it down there, if you're in the thick stuff, it's not going to really matter.
Rick, Jeff Feinberg told me that driving distance is being underrated this week, and we all know about the landing spots at Pebble Beach. If you try to go out and hit it 330 yards, you might just end up in the ocean because you run out of fairway at a certain point. What stats are you really keying on this week? And is there like strokes gained approach is obviously going to be very important, but is there like a key proximity range you're looking at? Like Stenson's really good from beyond 200 yards, but it doesn't really feel like there's going to be a ton of shots from beyond 200 yards.
Yeah, I agree. What's interesting with the proximity stats specifically is a lot of times we look at them and, there might not be a big enough sample size because DJ is always a proximity tier closer than everybody else. But with these landing areas that you mentioned, Pat, a lot of guys are going to be hitting from the same spots. 150 to 175 kind of popped up on my model a little bit as one of the leading proximity areas to look at. And in more simplistic terms, to kind of put a bow on the other points, total driving. Being long is always going to be an advantage because you're going to be hitting wedge when other guys hit 8 irons. But you need to be in the fairway. So guys that hit it straight, they hit it far. And really with the length of this course at a U.S. Open, we have players who are going to be back in play and in contention this week like we wouldn't see if it was 7,500 yards.
Is there any other U.S. Open or major that you can really relate this to? Because it's going to be, the Pebble Beach is going to play as the shortest U.S. Open that we're probably ever going to see again until it gets back to Pebble in like 9 years' time. But I was thinking like Oakmont, just looking at that leaderboard, there's so many short hitters near the top. Obviously, DJ won, but your Duffners pop up and guys that are accuracy mavens. I think the Justin Thomas win at Quail Hollow, where even that's a longer course, you see a lot of just pure accuracy players. Your Brian Stewart, your Chris Strouds of the world, Molinari, they all pop up near the top as well. And then even Olympic Club, where Webb won in 2012. I think those are all just... It's tough to correlate anything because the conditions are so dependent. If guys got stuck in a bad wave and wiped them out, then that sucks. Is there any course that you would look to or tournament you would look to, or do you say screw it?
Yeah, the couple things. I think it's really great. We do have a ton of Pebble Beach history, which is something we don't always have when we get to a U.S. Open venue. But as you were going through those, the one that popped off the top of my head in recent memory would be Marion. Marion has it's on this plot of land that, they couldn't even expand if they wanted to over the last 100 years. So it's basically playing in its original distance. And I don't have the leaderboard in front of me, but Justin Rose goes out and wins there. You don't have to necessarily be a bomber. That was the one track that kind of popped off in my mind when you were listening.
The leaderboard that year was Rose, Day, Mickelson, Duffner. Duffner plays well in some of these U.S. Opens, by the way. Ernie Els, Billy Horschel, Hunter Mahan, Luke Donald, Steve Stricker, Ricky Fowler, Charles Schwartzel, who will not be playing in this year's U.S. Open. He's done for the year with a wrist injury. Ben, are you factoring in much Pebble Beach experience into this?
I mean, I think it's good that guys have seen it. Obviously, the Pro-Am, I think you got to be careful with that just because it's just a different tournament. Have they seen the course? Yeah, that's nice, but this is not going to resemble that in any way. Pin locations, obviously just the setup in general. So I'll take some things from here and there. I even think you could go across the pond and look at some of the British Opens, but overall they're so unique. It really comes down to how are they going to set up the course? What's the weather going to be? And then we can kind of attack how we see fit.
4 of the past 5 U.S. Open champions at Pebble Beach had won the Pro-Am before winning the U.S. Open. Graham McDowell was the only outlier there in 2010, but he had an 8th place finish 2 years before winning at the U.S. Open that season. So I do think it matters. I don't think it's the end-all, be-all. You don't just need to cross someone off your list because they don't have a ton of Pebble experience, but I do think that it can go a little bit of the way because you'll see with some of my picks that I sort of have a mix that I'm leaning towards some guys that do have some really, really good Pebble Beach experience than other guys who just have none, who I just think pop off the page for me this week. Let's dive into the field, though. There are 6 players above $10,000, Rick. Brooks is the most expensive. DJ is the second most expensive. They're the 2 players above $11,000. If pricing had come out after the Canadian Open, Rory, who is now the favorite to win this tournament, would probably be above $11,000 too. Do you think that people gravitate towards Rory coming off the hot week and leave Brooks and Dustin behind? Or do people just say, Pebble Beach, Dustin Johnson, I'll take him?
So you're absolutely right that Rory should be more expensive than he is. But to answer your question, no, I don't think people are going to gravitate to him because it's DFS golf. We take the guy who was the best player on the planet last week and we completely write him off for this week, which is what it seems like people are doing with Rory already. it's one of these situations where there's probably just a few $100s in value where Rory should be a little bit more expensive. Brooks probably would have been a little bit cheaper had this pricing came out after the RBC Canadian. But to your point, Pat, I'm laser focused on DJ here with the great US Open history, the great Pebble Beach history, his game off the tee. And quite honestly, even when Dustin plays kind of poorly and we don't think he's playing all that great, seems to work his way into the top 20, top 10, top 5 quite often.
Ben, what do you make of Dustin, Brooks, and Rory here? Do you have like a power ranking of them? And we know that you're a huge Rory guy, but if there is no wind, although he's missed 3 consecutive cuts at the US Open, Rory, I feel like, is more alive. That was one of the reasons I really didn't love him here, that if the wind starts gusting, that's not Rory time.
No, Rory's, and like I said, I'm a huge Rory guy. I will say the biggest knock on him is, unlike someone like DJ, Rick just kind of talked about this, it feels like even when DJ doesn't have it, he's not going to completely kill you. Rory, in bad conditions, and when he doesn't have it, we've seen, 3 straight missed cuts at US Opens. Having said that, if it is calmer, this guy is just unstoppable right now. What he can do with the driver, even on courses like this where that's not the way to attack, it's still a game changer. So I'll take the discount with him. Obviously, I think we have to talk about Brooks. I would love to pretend he's not here.
Yeah, do you think I can convince DraftKings just to run a millionaire maker where Brooks is not eligible to be picked? We'll just take him out of the field, because I feel like I'd be doing a lot better, because I never play Brooks at these majors, and then I look back like, oh yeah, he wins all of them, so I lose. That's not good.
No, I've been doing that on my own. I just omit him from the pool, and then I don't win recently in these majors because Brooks has just been unstoppable. So this is a situation where I think DJ sets up the best, but if there's a glaring ownership difference in certain spots, I'm going to really have to try to look to Brooks. It's hard to pay that price, especially when he's really popular. And obviously his stock in majors is through the roof right now, but it's hard to argue with the results. And when you're getting a big discount, it's something you seriously have to consider.
So it does seem, Rick, like at least based on initial ownership, and we're discussing this on a Tuesday morning, so a lot can change, that Brooks looks like he's just going to be the low-owned guy from Spieth and Brooks are the 2 lowest-owned guys above $10,000, and they're around the same projected ownership right now, between 9 and 11%. And we're talking about DJ up around like 18, 19%, Rory around 17%, Tiger around 15%, Patrick Cantlay around 20%. That is a Brooks Spieth start something that's viable?
Oh man. Okay. So I guess I'll go on the record here. The Spieth thing is kind of interesting because we know how bad his off the tee game has been, but in very recent history, he's actually gained off the tee in 7 of his last 8 rounds. I don't necessarily think that his putter can stay as nuclear as it has been, but we know he can be one of the best putters on the planet. So I'm actually at like the very start of a trending up to get back into Jordan Spieth. And I think if you pair him really, with any of these other guys up here, if you can find a way to get them into your lineups, it's going to be unique. And I think you'll have a lot of win equity or a lot of leverage if one of these guys ends up winning it.
Yeah, Ben, what do you do with Spieth here? Because I keep trying to convince myself that he's going to be an absolute disaster because he cannot drive the ball. He's just going to spray it. But as Rick mentioned, the driver is slowly coming around, and he doesn't need to gas driver on every single hole here. He can figure it out and maybe develop a modicum of accuracy. We know the irons have also been off, but he has good vibes at Pebble Beach. He's won here in the past. He was winning after 36 holes back in February before he just started he like turned sideways and shot into the ocean a bunch of times and completely fell off the map. But listen, if I fade Brooks and Brooks beats me, I get that. He's the highest price guy. I feel better with my lineups not having him in there. But Spieth is affordable. I know he can win this, but I don't know what to do with him.
He can win this. I just have a really hard time when I look at a guy, and it's not that he's behind everybody else, with the ball striking. It's not even in the same atmosphere, stratosphere. It's unreal. He's gaining like 10 strokes around the green and putting combined, and that's what's been carrying him. So he's going to need to play better off the tee. It is coming around. That is true. But when I just look and I say, we haven't talked about these guys yet, but I can get $600 difference to someone like Rose, 800 to Ricky, 1,000 to guys like Rahm. It's a really tough sell, even though he is going to be one of the lower owned guys.
So this is something very interesting. It was tweeted at me live as we do. This is from Golf Gurus at Golf Savages 2 on Twitter. It's a ranking of the top 10 players in the field on drives more than 260 yards and guys of under 260 yards. So we talk about like clubbing down. Will that improve your accuracy? Brooks's accuracy goes up 9% on drives less than 260 yards. DJ is up 8%. Tiger actually is less accurate when he hits the ball shorter than longer, but he's just steadily around like 63% in terms of driving accuracy. And that Spieth gets way worse. Spieth is down 12%. So maybe it is better for him to just step up and hit driver every time and hope that it lands in the fairway. The other big winner in this, the big gainer, Ricky Fowler is up 7% on shorter drives over his normal accuracy, but he's pretty accurate to begin with. Jason Day goes from 55% driving accuracy to 65% driving accuracy on shorter drives. So I just thought that was an interesting tidbit. And these samples aren't super small. They're drives of like the minimum on here is John Rahm, who has 80 drives under 260 yards that are weighted versus 476 drives that are over 260 yards. So follow them on Twitter at Golf Savages 2. I just thought that was, if you want to see the entire chart, I just thought that was pretty interesting. Patrick Cantlay, Rick. Everyone loves Patrick Cantlay. He rates out perfectly. The around the green game has come back. He is going to be mega chalk at $10,000. I don't have a bet on him. I know a lot of people got him at 66 to 1, at 40 to 1. I can't see myself pulling the trigger at 20 to 1. And I said that I'd rather bet Spieth than bet Patrick Cantlay at the US Open. And not to say that I don't like Cantlay, I just think that Spieth has a better chance to win. He probably has a better chance of finishing dead last as well, but what do you do with this guy? Like, I can't figure it. This entire range kills me. I can't figure it out.
Yeah. So first off, I guess Golf Savages 1 was taken. This is the second iteration of Golf Savages. That's where the good stuff's at. But Cantlay, yeah, it's really an interesting decision to make. And I think it is completely dependent on two things: the type of contest that you're playing and your risk aversion, right? To your point, super chalk. If you're playing some type of big GPP and you want to get away from a very common build, I think you have to avoid Patrick Cantlay. And that is not a knock against his game. It's not a knock about, I mean, he absolutely could be and should be contending here. The course fits his game. He's playing out of his mind right now. He's one of the hottest players on the tour. So I think it's really just all about game theory, all about risk aversion. And to your point, he's probably more consistent, right? He's probably going to have a smaller range of outcomes than certainly Spieth and some of these guys in this range. So to me, it's a personal decision. It's not really coming down to whether I think he's a good player or not this week.
So,
he certainly is.
Well, Ben, I fade Brooks like you do at all of these majors, and it never works out. So, I mean, fading Patrick Cantlay is not as egregious as that. So, I don't have a problem doing it from a risk aversion standpoint. Like, I'm going to play my guys, and hopefully they go off. And if Cantlay doesn't go off, I have a huge leg up on the field. But I have a feeling the most common build starting your lineups is going to be Dustin and Cantlay, and that leaves you with $7,200 left for your team. Would you envision that being the most popular top build at least?
Absolutely. I think there's no doubt about that. And I get it. I mean, we always talk about that. There's a reason it's the most common. It makes logically the most sense, but that's where you have to weigh outcomes. And like Rick just talked about, I think there's a really nice window where Patrick Cantlay plays well, and fading him, especially in a top heavy GPP, is the optimal move. You want to talk more cash things, lower variance? Yeah,
we're not talking cash here, Ben. We're trying to win $1 million.
Get him out of here then. Let's get him out then.
Okay, I like this
type of guy. I just, if you told me Spieth is the perfect example, even though I don't think he's the right pivot. Spieth, his dead last equity is sky high. His win equity to me is higher than Cantlay's. If you tell me one of them is going to come T20, obviously I'm taking Cantlay every time in that spot. I just think he's going to play well. But in terms of that ceiling performance, there is plenty of other guys in the 9K range that I'll live and die with before I go to Cantlay.
Yeah, it just seems like and just there's so much momentum behind him. And to be perfectly honest, in 2010, Graham McDowell, there's the big stat that was a narrative that goes around. It's like, well, no one has ever won a U.S. Open the week after, like has won the week before the U.S. Open, then gone on to win the U.S. Open. That's why people are like crossing off Rory, which I think is kind of insane. But if you just go like 2 weeks into the past, Tiger won Memorial 2 weeks before winning the U.S. Open in 2000, and Graham McDowell won in Wales 2 weeks before winning the US Open in 2010. They just happened not to play the week before the US Open. So I wouldn't really be too concerned about that, but people are obviously riding high on Cantlay. He's always a really popular DraftKings pick anyway, and even at this price, I can see a lot of people going to him. So that leaves us with one name that we haven't talked about, Rick. It's Tiger. And if I power rank the 6 guys from up here, Tiger is like 1 or 2 for me. And I don't think a lot of people are going to have conviction on Tiger. They might just play him because they love Tiger, but I actually think he can do really well here.
I tend to agree. The good vibes that he can get around Pebble, but I actually think Feinberg mentioned this, and I think it's dead on. Where when you see him progressing, when you see him trending in the right direction, it's like he's just knocking at the door, which is what he's been doing over the course of his last 4 rounds or so. And this iteration of Tiger, what we've seen is the more he plays, the better he does. And I don't like to see him take these long breaks and get that really like Tiger schedule where he only plays majors and WGCs. I think this version of him, has to shake off the rust a little bit. And we're starting to see that more. Played really well at the Memorial. I agree with you. We talk Tiger's always kind of overvalued because of his odds and what the public is going to do to him. But this is certainly a better setup than the PGA might have been.
All right, so let's power rank our top 3 favorite players from the above $10,000 range. I'll go Tiger, Brooks, Dustin. Ben.
Dustin, Rory, Tiger.
Rick.
Dustin, Brooks, Rory.
All right, so no love for Spieth. Spieth is, man.
No, get him out of here too.
If I take him, he's going to come 154th. I know it.
He killed multiple seals last time they were here. He was driving it. It wasn't even, and Pat, you talked about this. Yeah, he started off fast, but then he had to play, on the weekend. Obviously, they played Pebble on Sunday, and it was tough sledding for him. So I know he's playing a lot better than that, but my God, I'm still pretty skeptical of him.
You know that we're going to sit here, and he's going to be there on Saturday. He's going to be spraying the ball all around Pebble, and it's going to be like, oh, this is where Jordan makes his triple bogey, and then he chips in from 15 feet off the green from a lie where you can't even see his ball, and you're like, I really should have seen this coming. So, yeah. Or he just makes every putt, because that happens too. Anyway, let's talk 9K, guys, because this is where my pick to win falls in. 2 of my favorite players are on the board in this range. If we go to the very top, we got Rose, Ricky, JT coming back after a excellent week in Canada. That's really going under the radar, I think. John Rahm, Jason Day, Francesco Molinari. That's the entire $9,000 range. Rick, start with you. I love Justin Thomas. I think he's going to win, but I also love Jason Day.
Yeah, well, I'll back you up with little stats on the JT stuff. Rory goes out, wins the RBC Canadian by 1 million strokes. Obviously runs away with a lot of these stat categories, but Justin Thomas was second tee to green in that field, about 6 strokes behind Rory overall. Was terrible on the greens. He lost nearly 3.5 strokes putting last week. That is not something that we normally see out of Justin Thomas. So the most volatile stat in a bad direction for JT. Assuming that comes back, he should certainly be in contention. There was a lot to like last week, but I'm starting to see the buzz pick up, Pat. I mean, what do we think his ownership comes in at?
I don't know. Right now, if I look at the ownership, and if you become a member at fantasynational.com, you can find all the real-time ownerships hour by hour as they come in. You can do that. And that's one of the great things about the U.S. Open being on the West Coast. You can wake up Thursday morning and tinker some more if you really want to. It's not like, oh, I woke up, my guy WD'd, great, my week is over. Now, you got hours to stress out before this actually starts and check out the ownership. So Justin Thomas, right now, I got him at 14% ownership. He would be the highest owned player of the $9,000 range.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess maybe because there's so many names down here and guys that are going to be popular, but a 14% JT is music to my ears. I think he's really starting to round his game into form.
Well, Ben, the way that I'm seeing the ownership distribution right now, and I think this speaks to the types of builds that we're talking about. So you go like DJ Cantlay is going to be very popular, or it appears like people are going to take one of those top 2 guys or even Rory and then drop into the 8s, because it's by far the most on Justin Thomas in the 9K, but then there's no one else above 10,000. Then you get into the 8,000s and it's 13%, 18%, 15%, 20%, 17%. So it seems like $11,000 guy to $8,000 guys is also going to be a very popular build. But maybe if you just play all these guys in the 9K range, that's the move.
I hope so. This is my favorite range of the entire tournament. I really like most of these guys for various reasons. Justin Rose kicks it off, and to me, he's someone that easily could and I think should be in the 10K plus range. I know it's been a little erratic this year, but he did win at Farmers. Obviously, bad miscut at the Masters. You guys just talked about JT. I like him as an outright bet. I like him here. He just hasn't put, as Rick just highlighted. And then, Ricky's just doing his thing this year. Obviously, is this the one? I don't know. He's eventually going to break through, but these are guys that a couple different starts, couple different things, we would see them a little higher price. So I think you're getting a discount on almost the entire range.
Who is the outlier of this 9K range, Rick? Because to me, it seems like no one is going to take Rahm.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy, right? Because he was like the hot thing at every major that required off the tee. And maybe it is just a little bit of a temperament issue. I really don't know. I mean, it's two missed cuts at US Opens in the last 2 years. And this is where stuff starts to creep in, where it's like, okay, does he have the mental capacity to just keep it cool for 4 straight days, not get too upset if things go wrong? And it probably doesn't help that his recent form is bad too, right? Coming off a couple of missed cuts. It's shocking to think that we're not going to play him. I bet you Ben can stir up some support for him.
Well, my whole thing with Jon Rahm is that if we're going to play this a little bit in terms of game theory, obviously there are players that I like objectively more than him, and I'm going to use them. I like Thomas. I like Day. They're going to be like my 2 highest owned guys in my lineups this week. But if I do try to pivot off them or even try to do a 3-man build in the 9K range, because I do think that's going to be somewhat unique, you go to Rahm, who's projected to be around like 6% ownership, and then you think back, Ben, every time that the tour goes to California, Jon Rahm is awesome. Every single time.
Just loves that West Coast. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I'm a Rahm guy, and I think the temperament really correlates with the US Open in the sense that people are like, oh, well, Rahm can't play at this tournament. He's going to be screaming and blowing up once he's in the thick stuff. But the one real red flag for me is he literally never loses off the tee, and he's lost in these last 2 tournaments. It's not just been that he's gotten cut. His off the tee game has been bad, and that's, he needs that because the rest of his game isn't world class. It's just he's so unbelievable off the tee that he doesn't need to be as precise everywhere else.
He has 2 starts at the AT&T Pro-Am in 2018 and 2017. He came 26th and 5th, Rick. So it does seem like I don't want to say has this course figured out, but it does seem like he has at least good vibes here.
It's probably a much better fit than some of the other US Open venues that we could get for him. And it is really intriguing to see if this 9,000 range is going to be as kind of barren as we might suspect. This could be your leverage spot. And it might come from, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of natural build points here. So sometimes when we go through these lineups, it's like, oh, here's someone at 8,000 that you have to play, or here's someone at 7,500, and it naturally puts you into different slots. This field doesn't feel that way, and I feel like the ownership gets spread out, gets a little barren in places, and this 9K range is super leverageable, I assume.
Well, even if you want to start your build from in here, I talked about that Dustin and Cantlay build that would give you around $7,200 remaining to fill out the rest of your rosters. If you want to start your lineups, Justin Thomas, Jason Day, Jon Rahm, you actually have $7,500 left to play with, Ben. Like that's a balanced build. Those are 3 excellent players, and the back end of your roster actually turns out to be pretty good.
Absolutely. And I don't know how much you're really sacrificing. Obviously, I know DJ, yeah, he's better than those guys, but at the same time, these are world-class players. There's win equity there. And this is, I mean, it's worth pointing out, this is a brutal cut to make. It's top 60 in ties. 6-6 is going to be really low. So there is some value in trying to really shore up the back end of your rosters.
So if we power rank the guys from this range, Rick, and we give a top 3 from the 9,000, does Molinari crack that at all?
No, but he's not as far down as he probably would be. This is a pretty good setup for him where it's not bomber's paradise. But for me, I'd probably go JT, Rose, and then probably Jason Day.
I would say for me, I'm going to go Justin Thomas, Jason Day.
Third one's hard.
The third one is tough because I really like those 2, and everyone else in this range is pretty equal to me. I might just go with the ownership and take Rahm, but it's probably Justin Rose for me. Ben?
Justin Rose would be first for me. I really like him, and I actually, against the grain, I like Ricky, 9,500. Those 2, and then it's close. This entire range for me, I could get into Molinari. towards the back of the pack. I get the setup, but it's just priorities with all these other guys here.
I mentioned all the chalk that's going to exist in the $8,000 range. So let's reveal some of those names and see who everyone's really loading up on this week. You got Fleetwood at 89, Hideki at 88, Xander at 87, Scott at 86, Matt Kuchar at 8,500. All 5 of those players project to be more than 15% owned in the Millionaire Maker on DraftKings. The bottom end is Finau, Casey, Mickelson, Bryson, Woodland. The only one that I have a star next to right now, Rick, is Paul Casey. I really like Paul Casey a lot this week. And there's guys in the upper 7s I really am gravitating towards as well. But who else should I be sold on from this $8,000 level?
Yeah, so I do like Death and Destruction. I like everyone getting burned by Paul Casey and forgetting about him this week. But if you look at total driving, Paul Casey is that guy. He's long, he's straight. We've seen that he can win golf tournaments, and if you want to talk about dead last equity or win equity, that range, Paul Casey certainly fits the mold. The guy that I think is most interesting in this range is Adam Scott. I mean, his last 8 rounds, tee to green, have been outstanding. Clearly, being able to leave the flag stick in and give him kind of that visual has improved his putting probably more than anybody on the face of the planet. And, coming off a 2nd place at the Memorial and 8th at the PGA, just really playing well, really competing. And this feels like a pretty good spot for him at 8,600.
So the pivot points, Ben, in the $8,000 range, for some reason, people are off Tony Finau now. Is now actually the time to go back to him, because he's one of those players that almost got the instant cross off because his around the green has been so abysmal.
It's a tough sell. I mean, I get it. And Tony Finau, obviously, he has a knack for majors. He's certainly not, he was mega popular, felt like, for years at one point. He's cooled off, but that's a tough sell. The guy, this is a really tough range. As much as I love the 9K range, you got, right off the top, Fleetwood and Hideki. I really don't know what to make of him. Obviously, Hideki is playing great. He hasn't fully broken through in terms of getting a win, but God, 8,800, he seems to be firing on all cylinders. And then I'll just throw the wild card out. I know he hasn't been great, but to me, 8,100 for Bryson, you're talking Millie type tournament, win equity. I think he's still up there. I know the risk is immense, but showed a little life at Memorial. I have no problem taking a couple stabs with Bryson.
There's another guy right below Bryson that I might take a few stabs with in the $7,000 range who kind of has the similar vibes, I feel, to Bryson. But I'm with you. I can always be talked into Bryson at this point. Woodland seems like he's going to be a pretty good play, and he's not going to be uber popular because everyone's gravitating towards the top of this range. But Phil, Ben, why not?
Why not? Well, he should, if he keeps up his antics, he'll be disqualified this time for hitting the moving ball. That's step one. And it's just really, I know he's going for the career Grand Slam, and this is, I think, his best chance, but the way he drives the ball it almost seems impossible that he doesn't card at least a couple snowmans if he gets it through somehow.
Yeah, but first at Pebble this year, second last year. He hasn't missed the cut at Pebble, and that's also one of those shortened fields as well, where it's top 60 in ties. I mean, in the past 10 years, he hasn't missed a cut. He's won twice. He's come second twice. He's finished inside the top 10 7 times. I'm taking Day, I'm taking Casey because they've performed really well at Pebble Beach, Rick. It doesn't seem like anyone's going to be on Phil, which I find really surprising.
Yeah, it is pretty shocking because I know when he hoists the trophy at the Pro-Am, everyone was thinking, okay, this is it, man. This is the time he completes that career Grand Slam. But I think it is worth noting, we joke a lot about the snowman that he's probably going to card, and completely agree. But that super volatile birdie double, birdie triple, it is pretty beneficial for DraftKings scoring, right? So I don't think I'd want to throw an outright bet on Phil, but he can certainly outpace whatever his finishing position ends up being because of how many birdies he can make. And of course, that's relative to a U.S. Open, but still, he's that type of golfer who can rack you up a lot of DraftKings points.
So if we power rank the $8,000 range, Ben, and give your top 3, who are they going to be?
Oof, I'm going to go Decky, Scott, and then I'll throw Bryson as my wild card.
All right, I'm going to go Paul Casey as my number 1, Hideki as my number 2, Xander as my number 3, Rick.
I'm probably Casey, Adam Scott, and then Hideki.
I feel like we should give Xander some service here. He's played in 2 U.S. Opens and never finished worse than 6th place.
Yeah, I don't know if that's just there's so many names down here between like 8,500 and 9,500. There's so many really good options, but you're right. Xander's been great tee to green. He's coming off of 14th at the Memorial. He's just kind of not like a very sexy pick, right? But I think he can compete in the biggest fields, and I would not be shocked to see him top 10 this.
What do you make of him, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I think, San Diego State guy, likes the West Coast, big, shows up in big events, good driver of the ball. I don't hate it. To me, honestly, to loop it back, he has a Cantley vibe to me. I think he plays pretty well, but I wouldn't be stunned to see him have a middling finish. And then you got guys around him that I think higher ceilings, lower floors. So for tournament settings, I'll probably going elsewhere on most teams.
I have him as the lowest owned of all the chalky guys at around 13.5%, with Adam Scott being the highest owned around 20%. I guess the one name we didn't really bring up is Matt Kuchar, coming off another good week in Canada. You would think that Pebble sets up perfectly for his skill set, which involves hitting his irons to 15 feet every time on short par fours and hitting every single fairway. I know he's going to be popular, but is that chalk you would eat, Ben? Because it doesn't sound like you want to.
Yeah, it's nothing against Kuchar. It's just, one of the big issues, and we get this all the time on the site, is, what do you think of Kuchar? I think he's a damn good player, like all these guys. And you just have to be really careful that you don't end up taking positions on everyone if you want to make a stand. So I have no problem with Kuchar. It's just there are other guys that I want to make a pretty aggressive stand with, and that may yield myself to not having a ton of him on my teams.
Kuchar has played the AT&T Pebble Beach the past 3 years, Rick. He came 22nd, 62nd, and missed the cut in the other one. He did come T6 at the 2010 U.S. Open at Pebble Beach, though. He just seems like one of those guys that's going to be so owned that I could have 3 players for the price of 1 Kuchar in this range if I play enough lineups.
Yeah, I assumed we didn't talk about him because it was like major Matt Kuchar free space where everyone just kind of plugs him in because his price isn't what it should be. But you're right. I think Ben nailed it on the head. It's one of these situations where there's other leverage spots. Kuchar is just fine. I'm lukewarm on him. You don't need to be hot or cold on every single player, but the driving accuracy, the ability that he has shown to bear down in U.S. Opens and find a way to post some great finishes. That's all very impressive stuff, and it's attractive.
Okay, so I threw out a poll on Twitter. It's still running right now. If you could play one of these 4 guys, Ben, who would it be? Matt Kuchar, Webb Simpson, Brandt Snedeker, or Graham McDowell?
Webb Simpson.
Okay, Ben or Rick, who would it be for you?
Probably Snedeker.
All right, it's Webb Simpson for me. Right now, with 1,000 votes in, it's Matt Kuchar at 34%, Webb at 32%, Snedeker at 23%, and Graham McDowell at 11%. That bleeds right into the $7,000 range where we get Webb Simpson, we get Brandt Snedeker, we get Graham McDowell. I do think, for me, my favorite guy is Webb Simpson in this range, but I saw you tweet about it, Ben, and I'm on the same page. I like Louis.
Yeah, what is there to say with this guy? I like Louis too. I think this crazily sets up, and the thing everyone jokes. I obviously joke about Louis withdrawing, and yeah, he's probably more likely to withdraw against any random player. But the likelihood that he actually does withdraw after the tournament locks is really minimal. It doesn't happen as much as you think. You just remember it. Believe me, I can attest to it because I play him all the time. And this guy, he just has a knack for majors. I think this course will set up well for him. His around the green has been great. He's good off the tee. Recent form isn't good, but with Louis, that doesn't really matter. So dark horse pick, I definitely can see myself getting into some trouble with Louis.
Yeah, I think just the around the green game works out really well. It's sort of like the Jason Day thing. Even when I looked at Jason Day, he's been so bad on approaches this year, but the 2 times that he's gained are at the short courses that he plays. So that 150 range for him actually kind of spikes a little bit, as it does for Louis. And we know that he can get the ball up and down. He can putt the lights out when he kind of gets it going. So he is also the lowest projected owned player from $7,500 to $8,000, Rick.
Yeah, I actually made fun of Ben on Twitter about Louis, but I think he's not wrong here. Louis has the two stat categories that I'm weighing pretty heavily this week. If you look at total driving and you look at around the green, that's literally what Louis is. If you want to go elsewhere, a little bit down, a couple $100, I think Henrik Stenson sits there providing a decent option. He's been excellent on approaches, one of the best in the field. And while his off the tee game has not been what we would expect of Stenson, it's kind of a Jordan Spieth situation where it's trending up. Gained off the tee in 3 of his 4 rounds at the RBC Canadian. We've seen him win big time golf tournaments and majors in the past. So Stenson just kind of pops off at that number.
So I dig Stenson too. I bet him like each of the past 5 tournaments. Obviously, he hasn't won tee to green. He's been really good. The putter was struggling, and it even came back a little bit in Hamilton. So that was really nice. I guess my problem with Stenson is there's a certain threshold of being bad around the green that I just can't stomach, and Finau is one of them. Stenson's the other one. If he doesn't hit 100% of greens in regulation, he's just going to blow up.
Yeah, I mean, he needs to continue to rely on those irons that have been so good for him this season. I agree. If this turns into kind of a pitch and putt and getting up and down, that's not going to be great. He's going to have to outpace the rest of the field from the middle of the fairway, hopefully. But that's one of the things that you give away down here in 7,600 for Stenson is that around the green game.
What do you make of Stenson, Ben? Because I'm just looking at the other guys in this range. Like Sergio rates out really comparably, but he's also terrible around the green. So I've just crossed him off. So Sergio can't hurt me anymore in these majors.
Sergio is really the worst. My God. Stenson's, it's incredible ball striking right now. Like I sometimes categorize guys, oh, he's on fire with the irons. Stenson's on a different level with the iron. So I know that, yes, he will still have to scramble like everyone else, but he really does have the abilities right now to mask some of that because it is a problem and it's definitely concerning at this course. For me, this is a range other than Webb, I don't feel there's a ton of safety. It's more, leverage one-offs, high-risk guys. Last one for me would be Mark Leishman, who not going to be popular. I worry a little off the tee, but he's a little banged up. He showed some form at Memorial, obviously an outlier with his around the green, but I think he just kind of has the game that could really grind away here. I wouldn't be stunned to see him kind of pop.
So the other guys in this upper 7K tier, like I really like Kevin Na. It does feel like he's overpriced, but I think that he has the ideal skill set of what you want to see from a $7,000 player at Pebble Beach. He's going to hit all the fairways. He has the touch around the greens. The dude can putt, and he scores well on par 4s and has played well at Pebble Beach in the past, has played well at U.S. Opens in the past. I don't think that he's going to win, but almost like Louis, like I could see a top 15. Just because of their scrambling ability and ability just to make a lot of pars. But the other one, and Ben, he's your guy. He won you the Thunderdome at the Masters 2 years ago. He has a great Pebble Beach track record. He is immaculate around the greens, and he absolutely sucks right now. It's Patrick Reed coming at 3% ownership.
No doubt. All of those things are true, including that he's playing really bad. It's hard to get a read on where his game is at. It seems to be a different leak every week, but the one thing that holds consistent with him is his around the green game. That travels. It's traveled even this year with some spotty form. So he's another one that, the guy always has kind of that big game swagger. I have no problem backing him here at low ownership and sub 8K.
Would you go Reed or would you go Louis, do you think?
Oh my God. Honestly, I would go Louis, which is crazy to say.
Rick, I can't see you yet, but when you come onto the screen, I'm just going to guess you're shaking your head over this conversation.
Yeah, I actually passed out and then I had to upright myself again. But it's really scary when those are the two guys that you're deciding between. I think Ben actually nailed it too. It's Louis for me.
Yeah, I do think that Webb is the best play of all the guys in this range. He's the one that I'm going to load up on the most. But the one good thing about Reed or the one good thing about Louis is that you don't need an awful lot of them to be massively overweight. Like if you play 20 lineups and fill up the $3, or even play 20 in the $10 for the $250K top prize on DraftKings, like you put them in 2 of 20 lineups and you're blowing out the field if those guys go off. Let's talk Snedeker. I project Snedeker to be the highest owned player in the Millionaire Maker, $7,500. Rick, I know you like him. I think we all like him, but I can see myself fading him.
Yeah, I think when we talk good chalk, bad chalk, for only $7,500, some of these other guys in this range I wouldn't touch when you go a little bit further down below Snedeker. So to get him at 7,500 with the type of history that he has, coming in off of the fourth place at the RBC Canadian, knowing that he's one of the best around the green players on the planet. I know that he can putt the lights out. He's competed in U.S. Opens year after year. It just seems like if there's a spot for good chalk to eat, this is it. I can take stands on Kuchar or guys that are going to be chalk in other spots, but this is the situation that I'm probably just going to eat it and live and die with Brant.
So I have Brant projected right now at 21% ownership. Shane Lowry, who's an equivalent price, is projected in the double digits as well, Ben. Are people just completely overlooking Ian Poulter at the same price, who should theoretically set up just as well?
There's no doubt. I think you have a couple options here besides, Sneds is I have no knock on him. It's just the ownership.
How often are Kuchar and Snedeker going to appear in the same lineup?
Quite often. Yeah, if you start there, that's okay, but you better have some plan with your other four golfers. Like we've talked about this for each major. You got to be unique with your six golfers, not with every individual golfer, obviously. So there's nothing wrong with that, but just keep that in mind. Yeah, you have Poulter. Dare I say, I know he's playing really bad, but Kevin Kisner, I think this is a good setup for him. Obviously, keep it straight, lean on the putting. Maybe he can get hot, show some form. My man Fitzy is there. There are some options if you'd want to get away from the massive chalk.
So I have Griot and Kisner and JB Holmes all as cross-offs for me because the around the green has just been abysmal, and that's both short-term and long-term, that I have no faith that they can get it up and down and scramble out of it. The same thing happened with Stenson. Same thing happened with Sergio. That's how they're getting the X's. I got to figure out ways to whittle down my player pool at some point. But Poulter's the one I keep coming back to. Like, the form isn't quite there, but skill set wise, almost like you talk about with Kisner, that I just think this course, Rick, sets up for Ian Poulter really well.
Yeah, and when we're down here in the 7,000s, right, you don't get everything. You don't get skill set plus recent form plus course history. You don't get it all because those guys wouldn't be $7,500.
Well, hold on, except for Brant Snedeker.
Except for Brent Snedeker, of course, which is why he's going to be in every single lineup. So when you're looking at and checking off those boxes, no, Poulter does not have that recent form. But if you are a type of guy who relies on skill set or wants to weigh that, yes, he certainly fits. Now, Pat, you might like this one. I want to see where you're at. How about Martin Kaymer at 74? When I ran some of the regression models, the par 5 birdie or better stat was crucially important at Pebble Beach. And what's incredible about Kaymer is he doesn't make a ton of birdies at all. He's actually like one of the lowest rates in the field, but he destroys par 5s. His par 5 birdie or better is actually like top 5 or 6 here. So it's a really interesting dynamic. We've seen him play better as of late, and I want to get your thoughts on him.
I don't really need to be talked into Purdy Marty Kaymer. He's one of my guys, but I feel like there are like 3 or 4 players in this lower $7,000 area that I'm just naturally gravitating towards over him. I like the play, and no one's going to use Kaymer, and he did really well in 2010 at the U.S. Open at Pebble Beach. So I buy all that. I just don't have a really good feel for it, though, is the problem.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I mean, there is no feel for him. He pops off and finishes in the top 5 a few weeks ago, and that's basically all we're going on in a handful of stats that we think might be interesting. I don't think you need to have a lot of them. A couple lineups out of 20 gets you overweight, but if you're looking to spray a little bit, if you're looking to cascade and get some different players in the lineup, I think he's going to make some of those for me.
I guess the only thing to throw cold water onto Kaymer is his proximity from 150 to 175 yards. He has lost a significant amount of strokes against the field from that range in 10 consecutive rounds, it looks like. Sorry, 9 consecutive rounds. So that would be my, I guess, case against him. I don't really have a really good one. Ben, do you like Martin Kaymer?
Well, if he can putt from off the green, that's a prerequisite for him. I worry a little about the scrambling, obviously, but Kaymer, we saw, he can. His form has been bad this year, but he showed life, and he's got a knack for showing up in some big spots. For me, if I was going to throw another name, it would be RCB, who's right below him. A guy that, again, you're not going to get everything. The form hasn't been great, but I think his game, went from a macro view, sets up pretty well for Pebble.
So the two guys that I really like from down here, I expect GMAC to carry substantial ownership as well. I actually don't hate Graham McDowell. I think he's perfectly suited for this course. Obviously, he won a U.S. Open here, so he should be fine. And got himself into his hometown Open Championship with a top 10 last week. So maybe that's really where he peaked. Was a T8 at the Canadian Open? I don't know. But Jim Furyk and Tyrrell Hatton are both sitting there. They do exactly what I want at this course, Ben. And maybe I'll just go down with the ship with it, but I just like how their game's set up. Hatton has started to play a lot better, and Furyk has just been, like we talk about Stenson and his ball striking, how it's been dynamite, so has Furyk's.
It's true. Jim Furyk's not a guy that I usually play, but it really is Furyk's, central. It's just a perfect setup for him. He's so consistent. He can attack with his wedges, attack with his irons. Doesn't bother if it plays hard. That actually helps him. I've been on the Ty Hatton ship, so there's no reason for me to jump off now. Showing some life. I worry about him just because we've seen some really ugly miscuts after good starts, but at the same time, this is a guy 7,200 is really appealing.
What do you make of those two guys, Rick?
Yeah, I mean, I'll pile on with the Furyk love. The U.S. Open for him in general is probably one of the best places that you can play him because par is usually a good score. He's not going to go out and make a super ton of birdies, but he's not going to kill you either. So the U.S. Open already, just in general, is a pretty good spot for him. Then you get a shorter U.S. Open where distance is not a prerequisite. He's not going to have to tackle a $7,500 course. This is the spot to play Jim Furyk. And this is probably I don't think it's an exaggeration to be like, this is going to be one of the best spots to play Jim Furyk, maybe for the rest of his career, because by the time we get back to another US Open that fits him, it might be 5, 6, 7 years down the road. I mean, I really think $7,200, I'm never a Furyk guy, but everything points in his direction right now.
So the other guys, the problem with Hatton and Furyk is that Furyk is going to carry substantial ownership. He'll be into the double digits. Maybe it's just what I'm looking at right now because I've been talking about Hatton for a while, that maybe I'm just seeing a bit more bump in his ownership. What I'm looking at, maybe he'll follow somewhere around 7-8%, potentially even lower. I don't know. But there are three guys at the bottom of the $7,000 level that I really do like from a skill set perspective, and people just aren't going to use them. One is Lucas Glover. 2 is CT Pan, and the third Ben Rasa is C. Woo! Kim.
Boy.
I even left Luke List off this list. I bet Luke List to win. I don't love him for here, but I'm just going to ride or die with my Luke List top 10s and outright bets. But Si Woo does basically everything you want to see for this course.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. His irons are him and Noren, their irons are just consistently bad, but they scramble. But CT Pan, of the guys you just mentioned, I think sets up great. He had the quietest win ever. I don't know what was going on that week, but he just Heritage, which I think is a decent comp, plays well. Obviously, he's not the longest hitter in the world, and the game really is in good shape. So I have no problem going to him. Obviously, it's a step up with it being a major, but someone like Berger, I really worry about the around the green with him. I wanted to back him, but man, it's a tough ask for a guy like that.
Yeah, Berger's the worst guy in the field around the greens. Rick, do you have
an issue?
Do you have any thoughts on these lower 7K guys?
Just a few. One of them, I certainly don't mind Siwoo. The Lucas Glover I actually had to double check this to make sure. He has missed 7 straight U.S. Open cuts. Basically, after his win, he floundered around in the 40s for 2 years, and he's missed 7 straight U.S. Open cuts, which is actually kind of hard to believe. I don't know if he can break that streak this year. He's obviously having a better season than he's had in the past. But the one guy, again, this is kind of skill set based, who I think is starting to turn it around a little bit. How about Zach Johnson at an even 7? Not the longest off the tee. He's a guy that, is going to gain in approaches, is putting neutral to a little bit of a loser, and he can hold his own around the greens. I just wonder if he's going to be forgotten down here for a mere 7,000 with some of these other guys that I wouldn't even consider playing.
I think so. I think I'd rather, if we're going to take that sort of player, I think I would lean CT Pan over Zach Johnson, as crazy as that sounds.
And I don't think that's wrong, right? I mean, one is looking at, hey, look at their career arc, look at their long-term form in Zach Johnson, someone that I might trust a little bit more. CT Pan, obviously having a better season. He's found himself in the winner's circle. I think it's a little bit of a preference on how much you want to look at their resume. But I couldn't kill you for going with CT Pan.
Last two guys, Ben. One, just if you look at betting odds versus DraftKings value versus everyone else's odds in his tier, Matt Wallace is like weirdly elevated in the betting market, but I don't know if Pebble is the right spot for him because the guy hits it a mile. He is pretty good around the greens, but this just feels like it's really bumped up because he came top 3 at the PGA Championship.
That's my biggest problem with him is that, you have someone like Hatton, you have other options that maybe aren't as inflated just because of, and it's been incredibly impressive. He's playing good golf. I don't love it. I have to, I'm obligated to mention Thomas Peters just because that's what I do.
Pass.
Probably. If there's one guy who actually is the favorite to card a gigantic number, it's him. But the upside with him does travel. There's no doubt about that.
All right, two guys great around the greens, Rick, and maybe they can get it together here because they have not been playing well. One is Cam Smith, the other one's Brendan Grace. They seem weirdly suited for this type of tournament.
Yeah, Brandon Grace is actually the guy that I had, I wouldn't call it a star next to, more like a little dot next to it, which is like, this is kind of interesting because of what you just described, Pat. We've seen him in tough conditions on tough courses, really put it together. I don't have much more else to say with that. He's coming off a missed cut at the Memorial. He missed the cut at the PGA. There's not much recent form to be inspired about, but I do think that these types of tournaments and the conditions that we could see this week elevate Grace just a little bit.
Do you buy anything with the Jimmy Walker plays well at Pebble Beach? And surprisingly, his driving game is starting to come around a little bit.
Yeah, I just would rather play other guys. I don't know what his upside is here. I don't think he has much win equity. There's some other guys down here, even if I have to say Keegan Bradley's name, that I'd probably rather play. Walker doesn't do it for me.
See, I would rather play Walker over Keegan this week, Ben, just because the around the green numbers for Keegan are just so bad that it's almost like the worst version of Stenson trying to come in. If I'm not going to play Stenson, I'm not going to play Keegan either. What do you make of Jimmy Walker?
Yeah, the driving is coming around a bit, but honestly, I'm not sure how often I'll be in this range. And for me, I would rather play Thomas Peters. If I was just going to take a pure wild card, I would have him, even though CT Pan is a guy that I feel much more comfortable with, in an overall setting.
All right, let's talk 6K guys. Just off the hop, Rick, do you think it is imperative that you even dive into the $6,000 area this week, or are you trying to stay out of here?
I will likely stay out of it. I can see a couple guys near the top that I can sprinkle into lineups, but what Ben mentioned is kind of where I'm at too, where I don't think you need to get down this low. I think a lot of my builds are going to stop maybe mid 7s or low 7s.
What's the lowest you can see yourself going in the $6,000 range, Ben? Because I have Brian Stewart starred right now. I don't know if I'm going to commit to that, but he did kind of rate out really well statistically.
Yeah, God, it gets bad fast, as Rick said. There's a couple guys down there. The thing, and we've talked about this, that's nice about someone like Brian Stewart, at least he's a unique price. Like, he's going to allow you to make a build that's just different. It's a big ask to go down that low. Even like I looked at Seb Straka for a while. He's 6,300. I don't think I'm
as someone who rostered a lot of Seb Straka last week, guy cannot chip like at all. If he misses a green in regulation, it's maybe a quadruple bogey.
Yeah, so that could be a slight issue. For me, if I dive into the 6s, obviously there are some guys in the high 6s that could easily be in the 7s. When you talk about Benyon, CH3, those types, I'll have shares of them for sure.
So the guys that I'm targeting right now, and they've made the first cut of the player pool. That's how I tend to construct a lot of my lineups. I, put like 25 people in a bucket, and then I try to whittle that down depending on the number of lineups that I'm going to play, or even throw 35 in and then make the harder decisions as we get closer to lock. But obviously I have Byung-Hun An starred at $6,900 because the guy is amazing. I heard he might get a designated putter this week. We're going to see if USGA allows that. If that's the case, he's probably going to win. Other than that, Shez Reavie, good Pebble form. He is the best proximity player from 150 to 175 yards. That's always nice to see. He is kind of shitty around the green, so that's never fun. Bernd Wiesberger, Jason Duffner, and Danny Willett, Rick, are the other guys that I have starred.
Yeah, you overlapped on a couple of the guys that I like as well. I actually fired bets on Danny Willett and Duffner. In terms of DraftKings, I just think their prices are a little bit too low. Willett playing really well right now, coming off the 8th place finish at the RBC. Duffner, we've seen him compete at U.S. Opens, and his game is rounding into form. The lowest that I'd probably go, Victor Hovland, right? Won the amateur here at Pebble. I think it's a deep pull to ask him to do something at the U.S. Open in a professional type setting, but it's one of these situations where he doesn't have to do much to return his value at $6,700. And then I actually do really like the Ches Reavie call. I think he had a T2 at the Pro-Am, I think it was last year. If you look at just the pure strokes gain stats over the last couple of years at Pebble, you'll see Ches Reavie's name towards the top of the list. Doesn't get penalized by his lack of distance off the tee. I think he's a logical fit.
Ben, who are some of the other names that you enjoy from this tier? Because by the stat modeling, Scotty Scheffler is someone that the model loves.
Scotty Scheffler is an interesting player. Obviously, we haven't seen a ton of him, but destroys the web. And when we have seen him, he's been good. I'll go back. You mentioned Feel the Burn. Coming off the win in Denmark, he's obviously healthy. Took a long time off with that wrist. This is a good course for him, I think. He's not the longest hitter, can be accurate. He has results in majors. He's not going to be overwhelmed by any stretch. And then other than that, I'm not even saying I recommend it. I'm passing it back to you two. Kyle Stanley, is there any interest there, or is that just a no?
It's funny. Like I tried to look up Kyle Stanley yesterday. I didn't even realize he was in the field. He's one of those guys that falls into he's too bad around the greens for me.
He's really bad. So obviously when you get into the sixes, I'm more apt to still play a guy that has a glaring issue because they're in the sixes, and you're really, Rick just echoed this. Returning value is almost 100% correlated with making the cut at this point. Like you don't need that much from your last man in down here. It's fine 4 days, make some birdies and call it a week. So maybe I'll go there, but overall, I think you don't have to dip too low if you don't want to.
Like if we take putting out of it, Rick, like Duffner actually rates out really well across the board and everything, and so does Charles Howell. They're like the two sort of outliers that don't have a gaping hole in their games.
Yeah, I love that if we take putting out of it. We have a lot of different winners on the PGA Tour if we took putting out of it. But all kidding aside, Duffner is as solid as it comes for $6,900, especially with the recent form coming in, the pedigree of U.S. Opens in the past. He really is drawing a lot of my attention, and I hope that he just putts like kind of bad instead of really bad.
So if you had to guess right now who I have as the highest projected owned player in the entire $6,000 area, Ben, who do you think it would be?
I'm going to say Benny On.
Benny On would be the 7th right now, highest projected owned guy. Rick, do you have a shot in the dark here?
Oh man. He got added to the field late, but I know he's a DFS darling. This might be a deep cut. What about Joel Dahmen? He's everybody's favorite.
It is not Joel Dahmen this time around. It is the European Luke List, Eric Van Rooyen. So that can only turn out very poorly, I feel.
Hey, he gave us a first round scare last week, but yeah, his sample size basically almost doubled last week. I think he's up to like 12 measured rounds in the strokes gain stats at this point. There's some things to like, but it's a really small sample.
That just seems like, I don't know if it's going to be good chalk or bad chalk, but if I am projected double digit ownership right now, Ben. If that's going to be the case, that's an auto fade, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean if EVR beats me, he beats me. Playing all right, but I can't get there. And even the question there, it's not like I'm saying I'm going to have 0%. I may look to him, but to make a real stand on someone that polarizing in this range, how much better is he than all the other guys we just mentioned? So I'll easily pivot on that. That's not a hard decision.
Is there a way I can just not play Ben An? Like it's like, how you can like walk into a casino and get yourself like banned and like they'll stop you from trying to go in, the self-exclusion. Are there players that we can just not put in the player pool for ourselves? Like, I feel like if I never played Ben An, I'd be doing a lot better.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I would only have 5 guys a week, so that would be a disadvantage. But the guy, I will say, Benny On gained strokes putting for the first time in literally like 6 months. He gained 0.9 strokes at the Memorial. It can't get any worse. So maybe the POA does something. Obviously, he's an immaculate ball striker. We all know that.
Yeah, Rick, he's 21st in strokes gained approach over the past 36 rounds, second in strokes gained around the green, 11th in proximity from 150 to 175. He kind of does everything besides putt.
Yeah, like a lot of these guys down here, and it feels a little bit like throwing darts on which one of these really bad putters can hold it together for 4 rounds and stay in contention. If we're looking at it that way, I think Ben Rasa has just as good a chance as Jason Duffner doing it or any of these other poor putters. But that's the key, man. He's got to find a way to get the ball in the hole. Maybe smaller greens helps. He's not going to be, I don't know, maybe he can 3-putt as much, but he won't have like 80-foot putts. I don't know. Maybe small greens are the solution.
Yeah, I always say that with Luke List and be like, hey, he can't 3-putt these greens because they're not big enough. Then he misses like 3 putts from 4 feet. And you're like, oh yeah, that happened again. How about Kiradesh? He just like, he's good around the greens and he hits a ton of fairways. That seems to be good enough, like, for some of the guys that we talk about. And he does those 2 things particularly well.
My problem with him is he's I don't think he's a good enough ball striker for me. I've got him, losing strokes on approaches. Just that stat alone, which is going to be critically important every single week, especially a week with these tiny little greens, has me pretty concerned. I'd rather find a bad putter and hope he can get hot instead of find a bad ball striker and hope that he can get hot.
I guess I should throw it back to you, Rick, because you're in California. Will he be allowed to smoke on the course? Because I feel if he can't smoke, that could be a huge disadvantage for him because to be all stressed out.
That's a good question. We've definitely got some designated, like, hey, no smoking here, peeps. But I don't know what Pebble, unless it's outside, that's got to be good.
Yeah, you would think so, but who knows? Anyone else that you feel has some consideration and some merit in the $6,000 level, Ben? Like, are you an Aaron Badley man?
No, I'm not. God, imagine playing Chesson Hadley here. I'm a Chesson Hadley guy, but that would end poorly, I have a feeling.
Is there some sort of like to miss the cut part? Oh, well, this can go one of 2 ways because we know that at his peak, he will hit every green in regulation, then he's fine. So if he does that, he could make the cut.
That's his only out, actually only out. Not for me. I mean, depending on how many lineups you make, you look at someone like Thunder Bear, he's always got that firepower. He's cooled off. I don't think this is a good course for him. I honestly don't have a ton of interest in that range other than the guys you really mentioned. So for me, you don't want to get into the habit of just picking too many dart throws. Maybe 1 or 2 play good, but I don't think we see a ton of success from this range as a whole. All
right, let's power rank the $6,000 range, our top 3 favorite plays. Rick, we'll go with you.
Oh boy. All right. I'm probably going something like Duffner, Willett, and then give me Ches Reavie. Those 3 guys.
Oh man, that was like right around what I was going to say. I'm going to say Duffner as my favorite, Willett, and Brian Stewart. Let's go, Ben.
Benny on, definitely first. Duffner would be second, and Bernwiesberger would be third.
I mean, these are all the guys that I have 5 guys or 6 guys start, and those are basically all of them. That's probably not good that we've come to a consensus on the right $6,000 plays.
Nope.
Yeah, fade those guys.
Yeah, Ryan Fox just holding the trophy in a couple of days.
Why couldn't he have done that at the PGA Championship instead of like bogeying 8 of his first 9 holes? That would have been nice.
He's quite long. I don't know if that'll help him here.
Yeah, it doesn't. It seems like it should have helped him last time around, and it didn't. I can't imagine going to a shorter course is going to do much else. I actually pulled up to miss the cut odds on a lot of these guys. If we were to throw a parlay together, who are the players you have the least amount of confidence in from the high end, Rick? Like, is it Rory?
Oh man, it's not for me, but I could understand it. I think that Spieth could miss the cut. Quite honestly, I think that a big number here instead of like the Pro-Am is going to hurt you a lot more. And if he makes that big number, if he does kill a couple seals, to Ben's point, one hole can go awry, like we've seen Sergio at the Masters, Paul Casey at times. One hole can really kill you in a major.
Ben, if I play a Rory, Spieth, Sergio to miss the cut parlay, what do you think that pays?
7-1.
57-1.
57-1. That's why I'm not an odds maker, people. That's really not that. What is Rory? Yeah, I guess Rory in there, but
Rory is
God.
Rory is 4.5 to 1 to miss the cut. Spieth is 3 to 1 to miss the cut, or plus 300, plus 450, and Sergio's plus 162 to miss the cut.
Yeah, in hindsight, now that seems a lot more logical.
But as we said, it's sort of like the opposite of the Masters. So a larger portion of the field misses the cut at the U.S. Open, where like everyone makes the cut at the Masters.
Oh, definitely. There's going to be big names that miss the cut. There's no doubt about it. Obviously, it's tough to predict some of them, but I think Spieth and Sergio are the obvious choice. Rahm, I think, would be another one who I think a lot of people wouldn't be stunned if he has a short week.
Yeah, if you play even if you just take those two out, you play like Rahm, Bryson. Who are other nutcases? Sergio. I'm going to stick with Sergio. Sergio's definitely winning now, by the way, because no one after all the talk about Sergio has missed the cut at 7 consecutive majors, but he plays really well at the other tournaments, and everyone used him last week, and he missed the cut anyway. That it really seems like a perfect rebound spot for him when absolutely no one is going to play him. Where the hell is Bubba Watson? I'll throw him on there too. So I play Rahm, Bryson, Sergio, Bubba as a to miss the cut parlay. Rick, that's 68 to 1.
Oh, I like that one. Bubba's missed 4 of 5 cuts at the U.S. Open. He is definitely a weak-minded golfer. He'd be a good one for it.
All right, so maybe I'll throw these together. I'm doing a live chat, 1 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday, and maybe I'll throw together some to miss the cut parlays. I think that's the play. Would you agree that's probably the play here over to make the cut parlay this week?
I love that. If your book offers it, it can be tough to find down here, but I'm all for that. I think that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's a reason to move to Canada, Rick. You can pay higher taxes, but you can make to miss the cut parlays.
It's all worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just got to win a few of them. All right, that will do it on the Pat Mayo experience. Actually, it won't, because we need to pick a winner. I am picking Justin Thomas to win the U.S. Open. Rick, who are you picking?
I'm going to go with Rory McIlroy so that he can win and we can never talk about this back-to-back thing again.
So do not throw him on my to miss the cut parlay.
Now that I've picked him, he's certainly going to miss the cut. I think you're safe.
All right, that's great news. Ben, are you going to go with Justin Thomas? Are you going to go with Ricky Fowler? Or are you going to go with Dustin Johnson?
It was going to be Ricky Fowler, but I'm actually going to steal a different Justin. I'm going to go with Justin Rose. Bringing it back to what Rick said, I see a little Marion in here. I know he's been having an erratic year. I think he sets up pretty well. I love the odds. I think Justin Rose grabs a second this week.
So if you think that we're all a bunch of morons, and I know a lot of people online think that, less so of you two, more so of me, if you played a Rory McIlroy, Justin Rose, Justin Thomas to miss the cut parlay, that would pay 76 to 1.
I'm going to put it in right now.
You and me both. Yep.
There's the move. I might have to get in on that. Thank you all for watching, everyone out there. If you want to get into a draw for 100 or 20 or 10 DK dollars, 3 ways to do so. Smash the like button for the episode, leave your DraftKings handle in the comment section, and tell me who you think is going to be the highest owned player in the DraftKings Millionaire Maker. I project Brandt Snedeker, but it could be Matt Kuchar. It could be whoever else, Dustin Johnson. Just make your pick, throw it in there. You're in the draw. Subscribe, rate, and review the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever. Leave a 5-star review, DraftKings handle, and something nice about the show, and you're in the draw for all of those things. Plus, if you follow me on Instagram at @ThePMEHeart, one of the U.S. Open pictures or videos that are up there, and just leave your DraftKings handle in the comment section. Maybe say something nice about the show. That would go a long way to help you getting more weight in the draw, maybe more ballots in the draw. You'll be in a draw that I'll give away on Wednesday show, 1 p.m. Eastern time, on my Facebook channel, on Periscope, hopefully YouTube, if we're back. If not, it'll be on Facebook and Periscope, and you can come join the chat and find out if you've won. I'll have my finalized betting card up there too. And if you're looking for the link for the Pat Mayo Experience DraftKings Open, it's over 80% full already, so you need to go get into that. It's in the description of all of the audio podcasts and up on Facebook. Can't have that on YouTube no more, so that's going to be it. Rick, what do you got going on at dfsondemand.com for the U.S. Open?
Yeah, lots of great new tools on the site. The video preview is already out. We're gaining some steam in the one and done. So things are going well. It's a lot of fun.
Ben, what is going on at Osimo? You got a ton of live content coming out?
Ton of content. We got shows, projections, obviously articles for me and the whole team. You can use the promo code JazzRaz if you're interested in signing up. Obviously, come check it out. And then we have all the other sports with baseball going on. Football will be here before we know it.
They still play baseball? I had no idea.
That's what I've heard, allegedly.
All right. You doing well with baseball this year?
I try to stay away from baseball. I do dabble. Obviously, I use our stuff, and that helps me keep afloat. But that is the one sport that I think is just such a grind for DFS.
Yeah, it seems like you'd have to be into it every day in order to do
It's
it.
tough.
With golf, I mean, it's up the most like football. That's what makes it so great. Anyway, I'm Pat Mayo. Thank you all for watching. Someone out there, go win $1 million or 250K, whatever it may be. Let me know. Give you a shout out on the show. I'm Pat Mayo. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo experience. Experience.